Hello my bookish lovelies, Kira here, and today I'm going to be doing the Ride or Die book tag. I was tagged in this by Break Even Books. I'm going to go ahead and leave his channel down in the description below. Thank you so much for tagging me. And we're just going to go ahead and get into the questions. Question number 1, The BFF, a book that not everyone likes but has been with you since the start. For this, when I say the start, I think I'm going to go by like around the time just before I started my booktube channel. And for this, I'm going to go ahead and pick Mem by Bethany C. Morrow. This is actually an alternate history speculative fiction that really circulates around memory. This actually doesn't have a really high rating on Goodreads. I think it's only like about a 3.4 stars. But one of the reasons why I thought this book was so amazing and so beautiful is also the same reason that it got the 3.4 stars, because I went through and I read the reviews. So this book can actually be a little bit confusing in some portions of it because it follows a stream of consciousness, which means like that you might be thinking of a memory and your memories bleed into your present, which I find very true to real life. I'll be sitting there, I'll be thinking about something, and what I'm thinking about and distracted by will bleed into the things I do during my day-to-day activities. I do think like that is very relevant, but that also kind of means like that they're switching back and forth between her memories and what's going on in the present, and it kind of like makes things a little bit confusing. So while I understand like why people rated it a 3.4 stars, I think like the dynamics of this and the flow and everything like that goes into this and what it captures as far as like the human condition goes is just plain out beautiful. I really do recommend like this book. This is actually one of my all-time favorites because in spite of everything like that everybody says, like I still gave it a 5 out of 5 stars because it just touched me so deeply, and I just think it's just such an amazing, amazing book. Question number 2, The Long Drive, a book you take on a journey or if you knew you'd be spending a lot of time unable to move. Think plane, train, or automobile. For this, if I was, and this is assuming that I'm going to be doing a reread, I'm actually going to pick Queen of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. Right before I discovered BookTube, this was actually the book that made me realize there was a BookTube, because like I was going through and I was looking stuff up and I realized that there was people talking about this book on the internet. I loved this book before, and it's a book like that I would really want to reread because it's a book like that I ended up loving so much. I ended up reading all 3 books on my Kindle, and then I ended up hunting down the physical copies of all 3 books. The reason like why I'm not holding them like right now is because like they're kind of buried. I have to go through and reorganize my books as soon as I get the opportunity, which I need to bring those out because I love those books so much, and the cover is so gorgeous. I love the hardback cover and it's just amazing. This book is just, it's so like well developed, and it's another book like that I don't think everybody would love because I feel like the ending was very polarizing, but like the first book like really got a lot of people because it had like the princess, and then you know she has to go and take over a kingdom like when she doesn't like, really have like, a lot of experience, so like there is a lot of growth. But the second book in the series, like it was just, oh man, like I did not see it coming, and it was intense and brilliant. Like and how it bled like into everything else, and it just, I cannot recommend Queen of the Tearling enough. I know this is not a recommendations video, but like I keep having to talk about books like that. I cannot express enough like how much I love them. So you guys are gonna get like a lot of probably like recommendations and love in this video because like there's just so many books like in this, like that this tag has kind of sparked for me as far as love goes, like just overflowing like for the books that I'm about to talk about. So if you pardon me on that, we'll be good. Let's go ahead and get on to the next question. Question number 3. The Newcomer, the most recent book you've read that you cannot stop talking about. Okay, if you guys have been on my channel for like a little bit, you guys know that what's probably coming. It's The House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. I cannot stop talking about this book because it was just so wonderful. I loved it so much. I want everybody to read it so that I can talk to everybody about it. It was just so endearing because it had like the found family trope in it, and it was just, I don't want to say too much about this book because and I will stress this like again and again, like 90% of like what I found like to be so magical about this book was the discovery and the feelings and emotions that went along with it, and it just felt so absolutely magical. And it was reminiscent for me of Wayward Children series by Shannon McGuire, except like without the portal fantasy, but it still had like the magical element, like of having like these kids like that had special abilities and talents, and every child like that had special abilities and talents. It was just they were housed like in these orphanages, like where they could keep track of them. It was so good. It was so good, and it's just so heartwarming, and it really like emphasizes like what's important in life, and it just makes me so happy to talk about it. Question number 4, the quiet one. The book you reach for when you need some peace and quiet. Well, I don't know like if there's a particular book, because I struggle like when it comes to rereading. Like I'll reread books here and there, but like overall like I don't really like dive in like to the full book. I usually annotate so I can go back and read my favorite sections. So for this, the books like that I keep going back to when I need like a little bit of peace and quiet, I usually like to dive into romance books, because I feel like romance books like are just very like serene, and they don't take a lot of brain power, and I can just kind of flow through them, and I can just kind of enjoy like, you know, the angsty romance or the arguing and the ride and everything else. And it's just, that's really like what I love about romance books, is because like I can just like completely like just sit back and relax. Question number 5, the outgoing one. The book you love to read in public or don't mind keeping with you for antisocial occasions. I actually don't have one particular book that's like this. I pretty much like I'll read anything out in public. I'm not ashamed of what I read. I don't care like what people think about what I read, because you know what, I love the books that I read. So I really don't feel self-conscious like when I go and I read some like we're in public. If I'm in the middle of a book that I enjoy, then I don't really care what anybody else has to say about it. I've never been like really desperate to seek other people's approval, especially like about like the things like that I put into my head, like those ideas. I like to put those things into my head and then kind of make up my own mind about things. I'm not really self-conscious. Question number 6, the guilty pleasure. The book you don't want to justify because it would be too embarrassing, but you love it nonetheless. So it's been a while, but 50 Shades of Grey. I think like that, I read it a long time ago though, and I still have very fond memories of it, just because when I was reading it, like I was still kind of like, I had just gotten out of college like a few years earlier, and I was still like kind of trying to find my love for reading again. And all things considered, I really kind of sparked my love for reading again. So as much as like people like don't like are not like really into that book, or it sparked like a lot of problematic conversations because of like how things were presented and everything else in the BDSM light, I still like have very fond memories of that book, because it actually helped to reignite my love for reading fiction. When I was in college, like the only thing that I really read was nonfiction, and so it really took me a long time like to really kind of grow my love for fictional books again, and that really helped. Question number 7, The Stranger. The book no one seems to have heard of and you wish everyone had read it so you can talk about it. I actually have 2 books for this, because there are books like that I read that really kind of stand out and that have really like traveled with me like in here, and I feel like those are the most important books to talk about, is like the ones that really touch you. So the first book is actually The Wolf and the Whale by Jordana Max Brodsky, and this was a wild ride. This is actually about indigenous, like about 1000 BC, about the time that Christianity was kind of starting to bleed like into all areas of the world. And this is actually like got a very good combination of Norse mythology and Inuit mythology, but people like that lived up in Alaska, like the indigenous people, like they actually called them Inuit and not Eskimos, like that's the actual term. So I know that Eskimos don't typically like to be called Eskimos because it's not correct, but the Inuit people are these people like they're trying to survive, like it's very harsh conditions, like so like they have to hunt, and women are not technically considered good for becoming shaman, because women is like after like they have menstrual cycles, like they don't like really like get connected like with the gods, and it can like really affect like a lot of things and anger the gods. Like women are not supposed to hunt or anything else. But the main character, she actually doesn't have a menstrual cycle, so like her grandfather, who is a shaman, kind of starts training her and grooming her to take over after something happens to him. This book was very intense. There is a trigger warning for rape in it, but the culmination of like the Norse gods and everything, like how everything just kind of blended into each other, it had to be like one of the most unique stories like that I've ever read. And this is another book like that I really stress. I'm going to leave a link because I actually did do a review on this also a while back, and I really think this is another book like that really people should be reading, because like it's just so important and so inspirational and so wonderful. The other book that I really want to talk about is Enchantress from the Stars. which is by Sylvia Engdahl. So this book is also very interesting. Like, it takes place like from 3 different main perspectives. You have this race like that is an ancient alien race, and like they come to this planet kind of inadvertently trying to help the indigenous people, like as far as like progressing them, but like they don't like want to show up as being like, you know, aliens or whatever. So she actually comes across, like the main character actually comes across as a shaman, even though they're kind of like anthropologists, like they go from planet to planet and helping people. And then you have the other perspective is from the indigenous person, which it's kind of interesting because when you do it from the ancient alien race, it's science fiction. When you look at it from the perspective of the indigenous, it's a fantasy. And then when you look at it from one of the invaders, like that's trying to invade the indigenous folk, like they're kind of tyrants in the whole scheme of things, you kind of see like just like a modern kind of like almost contemporary kind of settings, like with science fiction edging. And this book is like a really mixed bag. Like, I believe this book was actually written in the 1970s, and so like a lot of people like still are not talking about it, but I read it and it feels like it was, I think it's actually kind of a what would have been considered a middle grade to young adult book back when it was written, when like they didn't have that genre yet. But it's just so different from anything that I've read before, and I really like look for distinctiveness like in writing, and I feel like this was just such a mixed, wonderful bag. Like, there was so many perspectives, like in so many like ways like this book could have been taken, and it was just so interesting. So that's another book that I really think people need to read. Like I said, this is going to end up being a recommendation video, but there's just so many books like that I love, that I've loved and read, and have just been such amazing books that I just, you know, like it's kind of like that thing, you want everybody to read the books that you love. Question number 8. The book was better. A book you loved, but the film adaptation was awful. So I'm actually going to pick a series for this. It's actually the Divergent series. The first movie wasn't terrible, but like the second and third movie, it was bad. It was so bad. I don't even know, honestly, like after the first movie, I don't even know why they bothered. It was really, really bad. Like they couldn't capture like the same kind of dynamics in the movie like that they captured the book. And I know like a lot of it was because like there was so many things like that were going on, like they really couldn't capture it. A fun fact, originally like the third movie, Elegant, was supposed to be a 2-movie film, just like they did the Hunger Games back like right after like the Hunger Games that had so much success, and Hollywood was still trying to capitalize like on other dystopian societies with the same kind of successful capturing like of the actual storyline that the Hunger Games had. So of course like they moved on to the Divergent series. Like I said, the first movie like was really, really good. That's actually what drew me into reading the books. But the movies after the first movie like were just, it was awful. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it because I was so upset. Question number 9. The author. An author you'll read everything they ever produce. You trust them completely, whether it's hardback series of 15 novels or a shopping list. And for this, I am going to be picking Brandon Sanderson. I actually started reading his books about a couple years ago, and I kid you not, I don't care what he writes. I have loved every single thing that he has put out. It has been mind-bending and an experience. And granted, I haven't read everything that he's read yet, but I will be slowly getting to it. But Brandon Sanderson is by far and above my favorite author because the way he writes like he's writing young adult, but the concepts and everything that he puts into his adult fantasy, because a lot of it is adult fantasy, is just amazing. He has written some YA books, which I've also read pretty much the majority of the YA books that he's put out, but Brandon Sanderson's pretty solid for me. It's just been amazing experience just reading all of his books. Like I am actually like purposely going through and trying to find like all of his short stories and just trying to read everything. Question number 10. Pick 3 YouTubers, tag them, and let them know their ride or die. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a few people. I'm going to actually be picking like more than 3 people. I'm going to be picking Connor from Connor's Library Corner. I'm also going to be picking Lucy from The Dreamer Reader. I'm also going to be picking Kira from Kira Can Read, ? And I'm also going to be picking Gabriella from Books and Other Nerd Things. Well guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this tag. I enjoyed gushing about all of the books that I just love. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you guys like this video. Hit the little like, hit subscribe, with the little bell icon if you guys want to receive emails every single time I post. I've also on Twitter, Instagram, Amazon, and Goodreads. Those links are linked in the description below. And I will see you guys again very soon.